Hi there, this is just a quick walkthrough of how I found a way to make a bubble burst because I couldn't find a better way of doing it through a tutorial online. And I've seen videos of people that can do this very well using various different methods such as dynamic painting and physics collision and such. But for this little cartoon I'm making to help my daughter learn the alphabet, this little cheat that I found works pretty well for a bubble bursting animation. It's just a UV sphere that I subdivided. It's clamped to a curve and it has an emitter inside it that bursts off all of its bubbles. It's also got a soft body on it, but I haven't finalised the soft body yet. I just wanted to get a bit of wobble on the bubble, and it's not working quite how I want it to just yet, but it's on its way. So this is just a sphere that I've subdivided once, and I have clamped it to a path that I made. Just wobbles along the place, and it's keyframed on its y-axis to make it move along at a designated time for a 30 FPS animation. So let's get this to the point that it's bursting, because that's really what I want to cover. Now there's two parts to this. First of all, there is a build modifier on this main bubble which removes the bubble in a specific order. To do that, it's really quite simple. It's just a matter of coming into edit mode, putting your 3D cursor where you want the bubble to burst from, pressing space, typing in sort mesh elements, sorting those mesh elements from the cursor distance, making sure you reverse it using the faces, and then the build modifier when it's reversed, because obviously I want it to disappear, not appear. So not randomized, reversed, starting from the beginning of the burst. 15 frames works good. That's about half a second. It doesn't take long for a bubble to burst once it gets popped, so if you were working at 60 FPS that'd probably be 30-ish. Like I said, it's 15-ish. It looks okay at 10, but I wanted to put a bit longer on it so I could get more particles out of the emitter. Now the emitter is just a small sphere that is keyframed inside it, and I'll cover that more because when I've made this, I clamped the bubble along the path first. So at frame 180 where it bursts here, I made that by duplicating this sphere here. Right. So with and then removing its keyframes, so, and removing its soft body, its build, and its clamp to constraint, and I just have a sphere that's sat there. I'm going to pop it down to the middle, Alt G, undo its location, and just flip back to there. Then my sphere here, edit mode, make the emitter, select that middle row vertices here, invert it, and delete everything except that middle ring. Now here's the bit that had me confused for about all of 2 minutes. Before parenting it to this sphere, we need to turn off its clamp to constraint, make sure it's where it's supposed to be in relation to our emitter, then parent it, and then when I turn the clamp to back on, it's all where it's supposed to be. Then to keyframe the emitter, making sure we're manipulating it in local space, we rotate it first, we rotate it to point at our 3D cursor there as close as we can to get that rotation about correct. Doesn't need to be too exact. And then, like I say, manipulating it in local, we can then pull it to where it's bursting from, scale it down. I'm not too happy with the rotation on that, so we'll adjust it that way a bit, and adjust it that way a bit, and then hopefully, there we go, that's a bit better. So, take it to there, and then we would keyframe the location and the scale of it. And that's going to want 3 keyframes to achieve the effect I'm going for. For now I'm just going to delete that and explain the rest of how it works with the actual emitter in here, which I set up from the point of bursting that I wanted to. Get rid of our 3D cursor, don't need that now. And this is just keyframed over a short period of time from a small scale at the 3D cursor along its z-axis here, along its local z-axis, keyframe to follow the build modifier, just about anyways, as close as it needs to be to release those particles. And there's plenty of tutorials for different particle systems, but for this particle system, these are the settings I used. And it doesn't look too great close up, but this is meant to be from further away from a camera anyway, and you can't see the particles if you're as far away as my camera is from the bubble bursting, and I wanted to be able to see them. It is only for a cartoon, so we need to have obviously the start set to the burst point, the point where the bubble is popping, and we scale it up to its normal scale about halfway through the build modifier and get it sort of lined up with everything. And then this last keyframe exceeds the build modifier by a few frames to get that last little extra bit of particles coming out that comes out of the end of a bubble popping. If you've ever noticed, if you ever watch a bubble in slow motion, some of those particles look like they're misbehaving, but I'm not too worried about that. It doesn't appear in the final render. So yeah, that's how that emitter works. The particle settings still, yeah, those must be coming from the verts, definitely not the faces, because there are no faces on that. And I'm giving it a bunch of randomness. It's a fluid with quite a small size, and I made a duplicate of this UV sphere with a slightly different material that isn't quite as translucent. It's a little bit more opaque so that you can see the particles a bit better, because as they get smaller to the eye they don't look as see-through. And that's about it. You can see the pretty basic particle setup I have here. You could use all sorts of different settings for this depending on what you were doing. And that's how I made my bubble burst. This piece of text is keyframed in much the same way. At the point of bursting at 180 frames, it scales up, hovers over my little character that's bursting the bubble, and floats off into the corner, and then just sits there. So I'm going to have that alphabet going across the top there. And I think that's just about everything that needs to be covered. This material I pinched from a tutorial. It's not 100% for anything realistic, but it works quite well for the cartoon I'm doing, purely because I wanted some colour to the bubble. I wanted it to be a slightly colourful bubble, so it's got a colour ramp in there, and I edited my own values into the different multipliers and the noise texture and stuff. I'm thinking about going back over this and changing the way the translucency and the reflection work on it, because they're not very good at all. I've pretty much turned it off for now while I'm testing. So I'm just going to come back to the materials throughout the whole animation as a final thing. So that is my bubble bursting cheat, if you like, my little trick. Let's see, so gone over the particles, the clamp 2, the build modifier, and now I'll just show you the end result of this rendered with my little character. So if you found this video useful, please give it a like, and I'm going to be uploading plenty more random Blender video things, particularly anything interesting I find that I couldn't find a tutorial for already existing, or not one that did what I wanted it to. So I'm sure you'll find plenty of tips, tricks and cheats in the future. I hope you have a good day.